council meeting on this May 22nd of 2018. Our agenda has been posted on the state website and in various places throughout the city, and we will follow this agenda as outlined. First on our agenda, I will lead you in a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer by Council Member Kevin Barnes, and then I will conduct the roll call. If everybody please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we pause this evening at the beginning of our American Fork City Council meeting, we acknowledge Thee and give Thee thanks for the many blessings that we enjoy. We're grateful to live in this community and in this nation. We're grateful for the freedoms and the blessings that we enjoy. And we're especially mindful this week as we begin to move into Memorial Day of those who have served and those who have sacrificed so much, both those who served as well as their families. We're mindful also of those who serve today and help and protect us in any way, those in the military, our local police and fire, and so many others. Grateful for sacrifices that they and their families make, for the service that they render, and pray that they might all be blessed individually and collectively. We're grateful again for this opportunity to live in a free country, to enjoy the blessings and responsibilities of freedom, for the opportunity to meet here as a community and to discuss items pertaining to the citizens as well as the government of the community. We pray as we are here that our hearts and our minds might be open, that we might be able to properly discuss items that need to be discussed, that all discussions might be civil and move forward in a pleasing manner to those who will be here and to those who will be affected on each side of some of the decisions and the issues that need to be taken care of. We thank Thee again for all of our freedoms, the blessings that we enjoy, for life itself and for this great nation, for the opportunity to meet here and to express our concerns and opinions. And we do all of this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that prayer, Councilman Barnes. I will now conduct the roll call. Prior to doing that, I would just like to state that Council Member Shelton is he's actually out of the country for the next week or so. And so we do have a quorum, and in the event of a tie, it's rare opportunities that the mayor will be able to cast a vote tonight if it comes to a 2-2 tie. So conduct the roll call. Council Member Christiansen.
Here.
Council Member Barnes.
Here.
Council Member Carroll.
Here.
Council Member Taylor. Here. And again, for the record, Council Member Shelton is not present. Second on our agenda is a 20-minute public comment period. We would invite anybody here in attendance that would like to address the city council, the mayor's office, or key staff. We would invite you to come forward at the mic at this time. If you could leave your comments at least 2 to 3 minutes, that would be wonderful. If there's items in the agenda that you'd like to talk to and speak to that, I'd have you raise your hand. But if there's something general you'd like to come up, we invite you forward at this time. Seeing none, we will close the comment period, public comment period, and we will move on to the city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one item to report, and that is on Monday, this coming Monday, there will be a lot of activities, and I know Councilmember Barnes will probably go through a few of those. But I did want to mention there's a fireman's breakfast from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And it's a great breakfast. A lot of people come, so be prepared to be hungry. Come and join everyone. That'll be Monday the 28th, 6 to 10 a.m. And also that morning, there may be a few loud booms in the city. I know someone was contemplating lighting off a cannon. Of course, not a live round, but just so that our residents know there could be a couple of loud noises that morning. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you for that report. We'll now move on to the council reports, and I'll start with Councilmember Tater.
Mayor, I don't have anything to report, and I certainly don't want to steal Kevin's thunder, but I just want to put a plug in for our Memorial Day activities. I'll let him talk about the program we'll be having, but for most of my life, I have attended the fireman's breakfast. It's kind of been a family tradition for us. It's a great thing for families. It's a lot of good food, and it's certainly for a good cause. So I just put a plug in for that, and urge you to get down and take advantage of that. It's a great event, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Carroll.
Okay, I'm struggling to know what is relevant to all of you. I have been busy. What have I even been doing? I was going to report that this Chamber of Commerce is working on helping us with some economic development initiatives. They met with somebody to put together an economic development website, and hopefully we'll be seeing more and more information on that will be forthcoming. I was able to attend the van unveiling for Kevin at American Fork Junior High. If any of you saw that on the news, or if you got an invitation for that, that was me and Kevin were both there. That was pretty cool. It was a big event. I did have a Still Days meeting, an RDA meeting, and I met with the consultant about the TOD. If you have any questions, please, I want you to just ask me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Barnes. We'll get our calendars out right now.
Come out, okay. How did I get to be the official Memorial Day spokesman? I don't remember that vote, but I'm obviously pleased and grateful to be part of that and to toot some horns of some people. I'd like to say I'd see you there at 6 o'clock Monday morning. But those of you who know me know there's only 1 6 on my clock, and the sun's way over there. So I will not be there at 6, unlike many of you, but hopefully I will be there in time to get my breakfast and get up to the program that will be held at 11 a.m. at the junior high. The band will be there. Need I say more? And if you want a seat, you better get there early, because when the band shows up with all their parents, it's a pretty good crowd, you two, right? You that have been doing that for years. A wonderful experience. There's going to be a chorale there that's going to sing a couple of songs also. And we will truly be honored to have Ray Garrett speak. It's funny to me in our society that we honor who I consider a very good person who served this city for, I think he's going to be 1 month short of 38 years. And we ask them to speak in public as a way to honor them. Most people wouldn't think that's a way to honor, but that's what we're doing to poor Ray. He will do a great job, I'm sure, and I think he's going to share some interesting experiences that he's had over the years. working in the cemetery. And I know of one or two of those myself that he and I visited with, so I'm sure they'll be good. The breakfast, I just wanted to mention that the pancake mix is going to be donated, as I understand it, by Lehigh Roller Mills, and Fresh Market is going to be donating a number of other food items, and we're grateful for them and for their willingness, which again just helps indicate what a great community it was that we live in, and just evidences of that time and time again. 2:00 on Monday afternoon at Quail Hollow, correct? Mm-hmm. The mayor's going to be speaking at 2:00 Monday afternoon. A group of former veterans and others are going to retire a flag. And if you've not seen a flag retiring, you need to see one, because they are very, very impactful. And it doesn't matter if you've been in the military or not. It'll still tug at your heartstrings. 3 days ago, I thought about what I'm going to say tonight, and I honestly said to myself, I'm not going to report on anything. I'm just going to go there and say nothing to report. But we all know that couldn't happen. Sunday evening, personal sideline, my kids were over the next door neighbors jumping on a trampoline and playing in a hammock. And my 12-year-old grandson, they were swinging him really fast, and of course with no adult supervision. This will be on the record. I understand that, Chief. No adult supervision, and he got thrown out of that. And just shortly after that, not knowing what had happened, I looked over the fence, and he was laying on the ground, not moving. And he's got 4 or 5 cousins around him, and they're not panicked or anything, and his sister lays down beside him and kind of pretends like she's him. And dumb old me, I don't recognize anything. This little guy's got a concussion, and he's out cold, and his grandpa's looking across the fence. We finally get his mom and dad out there, and they'd already kind of been notified. What I'm getting to is we quickly decided we needed some help. And our wonderful people showed up with the fire engine and the ambulance. What a wonderful job they did with the 12-year-old in calming him down. He was starting to hurt pretty bad. He'd kind of landed on his head and shoulders. There was real concern he may have injured his neck or his back or done some other things. They just calmed him down, talked to him, and wrapped him up in the coolest little, what do you call that thing, Chief? That little airbag thing that immobilizes him. They wrap him in something that looks like an air mattress, but it turns hard, and they pick him up and put him on it and then take him to the hospital. Happy to report nothing serious happened. They sent him home from the hospital in an hour. But again, thanks to the people who serve this community, our fire and our police, and there was also a policeman that showed up. They like to make sure that everything's okay, and maybe there's Grandpa's not doing child abuse or anything or whatever, but just a great job. Very professional, very friendly, and they're good with the adults and they're good with the kids. Not just him, but his cousins. So it just turned out to be as good of an experience as it could have been. Quick comment on the van. That was a wonderful experience. American Fork Junior High was kind of in the lead on this. There were a couple other schools that were involved, and they raised $81,000, I think it was, to help Kevin. I actually went to the junior high today and saw him at school. Great young man, and it was a wonderful experience and a good turnout for that. And then Josh was here, but I think he left. I thought I'd call on Josh to talk about the golf tournament. There is a golf tournament this Friday morning. Registration, I think, starts at 7. It's at Fox Hollow. It's being put on by the chamber. If you're not involved in it and you want to be, I think there might be some openings, but I can't guarantee it, but you can contact the chamber. And that's a great activity. They raise some money from that, and then they donate that, and that check is usually presented during still days to some kind of a charity, military charity or other. So it's a great activity. And I forgot to mention the Memorial Day program. They also, after all their expenses are paid, they donate some money to a charity. So great things, again, in our community. What a wonderful community. I tried not to ramble. I apologize. I'm through.
Thank you for that report, Councilman Barnes. Councilmember Christiansen.
Just wanted to make sure you remembered my name.
I did.
He kind of looked blank there for a minute. Just like to echo what Kevin said about so many different things. It brought back memories of the time that I was injured, and the EMS people came and helped me greatly and calmed me down, and my husband and my son and everybody else. So they really helped out, and things turned out well. Here I am. And you may have seen me wince a couple of times when he was talking about the Memorial Day activities. That's not because I don't like them. It's because I'm going to be out of town and I'm going to miss this one and that one and that one. So every time he mentioned something, I thought, there's something else I'm going to miss. But I want to urge everybody to go to it, because I've been to these things in past years and I've just thought how fulfilling it was. You know, sometimes I would miss family picnics or something to go to these events with city things, and I was so glad I did what I did instead of just eating hot dogs or something. Very, very worthwhile and very moving. Pay tribute especially to Ray Garrett, who I've known for probably 40 years, and a good man, a good servant for the community, and his heart is very well based here. Again, the community that we live in is wonderful, and the manifestation of that you mentioned about the van for the young man, that just shows where the people are and what kind of people we have in our community, and we really appreciate that. Oh, yeah, the one other thing I didn't write down was the one thing I prepared. We have a new librarian. We met her the other night, Cassandra Crane, and we're starting to work on room reservation policies to update those. So things are moving at the library already, and she's been here just a week.
Okay. Thank you for that report. For the mayor's report, there might be some redundancy in this, but I was actually privileged to attend this van unveiling for Kevin. For those who don't know who Kevin is, he's a wonderful young man that was born without arms or legs. He's in the 7th grade at the American Fork Junior High, and he didn't have transportation. The principal of the school kind of got wind of this and noticed that it was being difficult for him to come to school. They had to leave his chair there, and took it upon himself, and he told a great story of how this all began. It actually began with just collecting pennies, penny wars amongst the kids. $5,000 checks was given to him anonymously, and the carnival that took place, that was a culmination of many schools. Our chamber was greatly involved, so our business community rallied around him. At that event, they raised about $30,000. Our fire department had a car wash and raised about $1,500, Chief. And through all of the things, big and small, they raised $81,000. And so they not only bought Kevin a van, but they bought him a resource to further his education beyond high school. They set him up with scholarship monies and things like that. And it was just a wonderful thing. It all came together. Our fire department, our police department kind of ushered this car in, and it was just neat to see Kevin just ride right inside of it. It's a beautiful van. We understand his family is now just went to Yellowstone, and they were able to go together. And so it was very, very rewarding to see. I think one of the most poignant points of it was when it was all done. There was well over 1,500 kids there, and it was over, and they just swarmed Kevin in the van. They wanted to look inside of it, and Channel 5 was there. They had the chopper going, and they seen it. You just seen these kids just swarming, and it was an emotional event for those who have tender hearts, and so that was neat to see. Cemetery. I used to work at the cemetery when I was in high school. And I've been watching the preparation that's taking place to make sure that American Fork Cemetery looks great. And those, if you want to compare cemeteries, just go around. I think American Fork Cemetery, with all the neat features that it has with flags and monuments, I think that it reflects well upon our community. And we've watched how our staff has come together, and they've helped to prepare this for what's to come in the coming week. We've had departments that have come together. They've just kind of, you know, maybe one day you're on a roller or you're laying sidewalk or whatever it might be, but for maybe this week you were just weed whipping. You were preparing the grave sites. Even our city administrator and in Camden, our assistants to the city administrator participated during the weekend to help prepare the cemetery for the thousands of people that are going to come and pay respect to their dead. And I've been watching that. It's been very fun to see. I'm looking forward to the Memorial Day breakfast with my family. It's one of the things that I think is a fabric of American Fork City, is the fireman's breakfast. And we have made that a great tradition in our family. And it's one of the few things my kids will get up real early for. When we hear that siren go off, Chief, if we get up. And I can't get them up for any other thing, but between the food and the people that they're going to see, they get up pretty easy. And then the program. I think the most poignant part of the program, and I'm telling this, I know it's to a small audience, that if you have never been to that, it would be worth your while to take your family, because you will have a teaching moment with your family, with your kids, your grandkids, whoever it might be. There is going to be a great speaker, somebody who has been the caretaker of American Fork Cemetery for most of his life. If you haven't run into Ray Garrett, if you've had to go through a burial process, you've probably run into Ray. Ray takes his job very seriously. He looks at it as a spiritual element and not just something of a physical labor. And he will be speaking, but the great tradition is that we will honor everybody one by one, by name, that have lived in our community and that have given their life to protect freedom. And a flag will be offered up and presented, and a salute by the military for all those that have, again, from World War I right on through the war in terror. And then we'll hear taps. It's just it's a real neat event, so I would invite you all to come to that. And the last thing I might mention is I would just say, go Caveman Baseball. We are now, again, we have a great tradition. We're in the thick of the state championship. And did we win Bingham, Chief? Was it? Okay, so we play tomorrow. We're 2 undefeated teams, us and Bingham. But American Fork is definitely on the threshold of perhaps taking a state championship. They're right up there in the top tier of the end of this tournament, and so go Caveman Baseball. That is it for the mayor's report. We will now move on to the common consent agenda, consisting of 4 items: approval of the May 1st, 2018 work session minutes, approval of the May 8th, 2018 City Council minutes, approval of the May 9th, 2018 joint work session minutes. We had that work session with the Planning Commission. And number 4, approval of the authorization to release improvement construction guarantee in the amount of $282,784.70 and issue a notice of acceptance for the Lakeside LDS Chapel construction of public improvements located at 239 East, 1100 South. Any questions on the common consent agenda?
We do have one correction to the May 1st work session minutes. We just need to add a word in.
Okay.
To make it lengthy process.
Okay. So we had one correction, if you didn't hear, to a word to the May 1st work session minutes. And that has been corrected, correct? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve the common consent agenda with the one change to the May 1st work session minutes.
All right, motion by Council Member Carroll, seconded by Council Member Taylor. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Council Member Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilman Member Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. All right, common consent agenda is approved. We will now move on to the action items. Number 1 on the list is ratification of city payments from May 1st, 2018 to May 15th, 2018, and approval of purchase requests over $25,000. Any questions on city payments?
I do have a question, Mayor. Could I get a little bit of information about the purchase of 48 acre feet of water for $384,000? That
Yes.
maybe is some indication of being new, but I
No.
don't know what that is.
No, I fully expected that, and I'm going to invite the president of our irrigation company, Ernie John, to give us a little bit of background on that. This is a big ticket item, we know. So,
Thank you, Mayor, council members. We had the opportunity to purchase 48 acre feet of stored water. So just to give you a little bit of background, stored water, this is actually Deer Creek water that can be delivered through the Murdoch Canal. This was brought to me by someone that was selling their farm, and they kind of gave us first shot at it due to the relationships that we have in the water community. This water could go to Salt Lake because the Murdoch Canal goes all the way to Salt Lake. We looked at this, and I brought it to the mayor and felt like this was an opportunity to keep our water portfolio balanced. We need to balance our portfolio with stored water, with flow water out of American Fork Canyon, and with underground water. So this helps keep us in balance, especially this year. We'll be able to use this water this year. We have about 3,000 acre feet of stored water today, so 48 acre feet is a pretty significant addition to that. And the price that was requested is the wholesale price. So this was a good price. The water brokers would have paid the same price. This is the price the water brokers pay. Salt Lake would have snapped this up in a second if they knew about it. So I felt like this was a good opportunity for the city, and that's why I brought it to the mayor and the city administrator.
I think one of the things that's real appealing as well, because it is a pressurized water.
It
Is
can
it
go
we-
right into our system out of the Murdoch Canal.
It
Yes.
does, and it can fill both our upper pond and our lower pond, so it feeds both our pressure zones.
That is correct, Mayor.
And that's a real neat thing. So it saves us in a lot of pumping costs.
And stored water is an important part of our balance of our overall water portfolio because we need it for late season is the short answer, especially on a year like this year. It is a reserve. And we also, so on good years, we also have the ability to carry this water over. So we don't have to use it. Deer Creek is full. Some things happen when it's full and spills to the carryover water, but the short answer is we can use this water this year. We could carry it over and use it in drier years, which I hope we don't have many of them drier than this year.
A little bit of history. In 2014, we actually used all 3,000 shares that we have.
Yes, we did,
And
which was
so-
our last dry year.
Yeah.
And this year we are considerably drier than 2014.
Yeah.
So this will be this is about a week's worth of water is kind of the short answer through our pressurized system. Maybe a little bit more than a week if we can conserve some. So in the PI system, yes. Councilman Carroll, did that answer your questions or?
I'm wondering how it affects our budgeting too, if that could be answered.
You want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. So several years ago, I'm also president of Metropolitan Water District, appointed by the mayor and ratified by the city council. And so several years ago, I came to the city council when we started our pressurized irrigation system, and we needed some monies to pay for this stored water, for the O&M, for the operating costs and delivery costs. So that's when we first instituted that $1.50 fee on our city bills. Then a couple of years later, because of the Murdoch Canal covering, I came up before City Council again and asked for another $5. So there's a $6.50 fee that goes on that, and that money goes into a specific pool to be used for water. And so last year we had some really big balloon payments that we were saving this money to pay off. We did that. This is leftover money in that account, and I'll hold my hand up and say I miscalculated a little bit. I didn't take into account the growth of our city. And so when I first made that presentation on the Murdoch Canal years ago, actually in 2010, to ask for that money, I didn't think about how our city was going to grow. So I based that on 6,500 residences. The additional, we're up to like 8,200 residents. Is that about right, Adam? Is that, or Camden? I think we're about 8,200 residents that we send bills to. I didn't take that into account or to this degree, so that's where that money came from. It's in that water account. It come directly from that $650 a month fee that is charged our citizens per residence. Any other questions? Thank you.
So Kyle, that's in kind of not a sinking fund, but it's kind of an allocated separate fund, that extra $6.50.
So it's actually not. It's just included with the water fund.
It's just in the total
So we
water
will
fund.
have to use fund balance to cover this payment. But I did an accounting recently, and there was about enough to. There was a little bit more than the amount that's being requested that's currently in that fund. But right now, we don't have it in a separate fund.
Okay, but there is enough to cover it.
Yes, there is.
Mayor, I'd move approval of city payments, city payment requests over 25,000,
Okay.
purchase requests. Okay, so I move approval of the ratification of city payments for May 1 through May 15, which is the only ones we can't approve, and approve the purchase requests over 25,000.
All right, have a motion by Council Member Taylor,
I'll second that.
seconded by Council Member Carroll. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Council Member Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilman Shelton is absent. Council Member Barnes.
Aye.
Council Member Carroll. Council Member Taylor.
Aye.
All right. We can pay the bills of the city. Item number 2, review and action on an ordinance approving disbursements for fiscal year 2017 park tax funds. In your packet, if you know, this was kind of a reallocation of some funds that the council kind of felt like it was not in their best interest. So I don't have that document in front of me right now. Is there any questions from the packet on where these funds are going? This is these $36,000 plus.
So Mayor, representing the Park Committee, they believe that an extra, a larger amount for the third grader dictionary program was going to be needed, and so they increased that, I believe, to 1,500. And then they took the excess that did not go to the ballet to develop the Easton Dog Park. And so that'll be kind of one of its kind in the area, and that's where the other almost $35,000 went.
Okay.
I would just like to comment, as I read those, I thought their logic was really, really good. There wasn't enough to split over all the other things. And so let's take care of one good item and get it out of the way. So next time you meet with them, for what it's worth, tell them Kevin Barnes thinks they're pretty darn smart.
And that's what I tried to.
That's what you're
relay.
saying, I
That's what I
understand.
tried to relay last time, is that there is a tremendous amount of oversight just by the people that are on that committee. They go over it, they look over the things, they vet them very carefully. I don't think they need additional council members, lording over them in that way. They do a great job. They're well read in all of this information, and they clearly made some choices, came right back in after they got the feedback, and we're ready to go with this council meeting, so I appreciate that.
I also wanted to say that I'm thrilled with their allocation. Actually, that was where I was hoping the money would go, but I was going to respect their recommendation, and I'm really, really happy. And Kevin, I can say that they always had logic behind their reasoning. It's never arbitrary.
I remember thinking last meeting when we decided not to fund the ballet, during that afternoon I'd been thinking where would I want to allocate the money, because I thought we'd have to make a suggestion right there, and that's the one I was going to come up with. So we're all thinking on the same line, so I was very happy too. I appreciate all of their service and wisdom.
Okay, Mayor, we have to repeal the last ordinance, right? That's the recommendation. So I will move to repeal ordinance number 2018-515 and adopt this ordinance providing for the distribution of fiscal year 2017-2018 park tax revenues.
Okay, thank you for that motion, Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilman Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion approved. Item number 3 is review of the naming of the following streets in the Hanson Ranch subdivision. Number 1 is 450 North from 1120 East to 1250 East to W.H. Justice. Number 2 is 1250 East from 400 North to 500 North to Patriot Boulevard. And the 3rd Street, 1260 East from 400 North to 350 North cul-de-sac to Levon Circle. This is a process that the family has petitioned the city for. They were attending our city work session, and the council has the opportunity to further this along through a public a comment to have the public weigh in on this and move forward with that process, or to deny the petition tonight. So I think would the family like to address the council in any way? I think that I think Councilmember Taylor was not there, but
I read it though. I'm prepared to make a statement, but I don't know if they want time, but I read over it and I read the notes, and you know, the Hanson family has been there a long time, along with the Foley's, and I know it's not on the grid. I understand all of the safety issues, but if you look at the development, it's not in the grid anyway. And we have Mary Kawakami Drive, we have Caveman Boulevard, we have Auto Mall Drive, we have all of these things. I don't have a lot of heart for changing them and naming them what has been suggested. So that's how I would vote. I'm glad to hear what anyone else has to say, but it's that land's been with the Hansons out there for a long time. Everything that was in the document is accurate. I do appreciate the safety issues. I just don't believe it's going to be enough of an issue that would be a problem. So that's how I'll be voting.
any other discussion? If not, we have a motion. Oh, come forward.
I'm Candy Taylor, and we were here last Tuesday. I'm the oldest of the Hanson siblings.
But you know what? You look younger than Brian, so I'll just give you
Brian's
that.
one of the babies. And he's actually the executor of the estate. But, you know, American Fork is becoming a big city, and it's harder and harder to keep that hometown feel. And because we love American Fork. We've grown up here, we've raised our kids here, and we'll die here. So we want to keep as much of our heritage alive as we can. And just this tiny little bit that we're asking for to keep the heritage alive of Wendell and Levon is what we're asking for. And we don't even mind if, you know, you put W.H. Justice and then the street number. You know, that would work for us. But, you know, Mr. Kevin said last time, he said, why name a street after a dumb animal? But to us, they're not dumb animals. They are, they're everybody knows them worldwide. And they made Hanson Ranch, these Arabian horses. And Wendell Hanson Arabians is known throughout the world. So we want to preserve that. And you know, they have given a lot of notoriety to American Fork, to our community. So that's our position.
Thank you.
I didn't think I said a dumb horse, but I wasn't real complimentary either. I think I said I was dumb because I didn't do horses or anything, understand anything about them. What's that?
Turlin can tell you.
Yeah, it's in the minutes somewhere. I'm just going to reiterate the concerns that I had. I have no problem naming streets after people, but I do have a little bit of a concern naming them after particular horses. And so my compromise suggestion would be to name the circle but not the two streets. But I'm not going to fight it whichever way it goes. So I think that's clear.
Okay.
Mayor, I would move to approve the publication of the proposed street names in the Hanson Ranch subdivision. And it says to allow for public comment. Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Taylor. Do I have a second?
I will second that, and I have the same reason that I had in our work session, and that is that this area is not in a grid pattern anyway, and if you would have to know the streets, even if they were numbers, to know where you were going, and that's why I think that way.
Okay. Second by Council Member Carroll. Any discussion on the motion?
You going to go?
I
Here-
was just going to say, I'm really torn. I come from an area of the country where streets had names. I love horses, and I think we should name a street after my cat. But anyway, that's not serious. I appreciate what the public safety people said about this, and I think the life of an individual, if it comes down to that, is more important than memories, which can be presented other ways also. But I also think that the EMS people or anybody responding to a fire or another emergency call, we don't have very many roads that do have names, and they will learn those very quickly. You know, that should be the first thing they should do, is know where Thornwood Drive is and know where East Lane is, and these things. They would learn that quickly. So I'm still torn, but I can see good things both ways. Don't make me vote last.
I think it also stands to reason what Mrs. Taylor said. I mean, we're going to have the street number under there. It's just simply going to have the name. You see that now, like I said, on Caveman Boulevard. It's always going to be 600 East. I don't see it posing a big enough problem for us that we couldn't do this. So.
Well, what I was thinking is if somebody calls in a medical emergency and says, I'm on Justice Boulevard, it's going to take 30 seconds maybe for somebody to go and look it up and find out, or program their GPS or something.
I think that's probably chief. Is that when someone calls 911 and you get a readout, do you not get a GPS location for that almost immediately?
PD does. We don't run under the Spillman, so we're the grid system. So, but I think what you guys are proposing, the middle ground with the name and the numbers, is appropriate.
Right.
So do you know, are the police okay with that? There he is. I couldn't see him, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Chief Brems, so it won't be an issue.
As long as they had the numbers, because the comments we had from both police and fire were kind of against this, but I guess the compromise.
The biggest concern if it's just the name.
But
if there's the numbers to coordinate the cross sections and everything that matches the grid, that's our main concern. If there's both, we have several streets that you've said that have both, so we're accustomed to that. The biggest problem is just the name itself. So if there's both, I think it's appropriate.
Okay, I appreciate that. Because of that, I will change my mind.
Okay. I will call for a vote. I've got a motion, a second. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, we will move this on to a public comment, so thank you for being here. Item number 4 is review and action on the Robinson East annexation consisting of 16.39 acres at 1400 North, 100 East, including the ordinance of annexation, revised annexation agreement, and placement of the property in the R1 9000 residential zone and the GC2 planned community commercial zone. Any questions on this annexation? the planning commission, the things that have been discussed that were in your packet. We have great staff here that can answer them if need be. This is the area that's just right there up on the top end of our city, north of the church there on the top of by 100 East. It's going to be a great little development.
All right, I'm going to be a pain and ask a question.
Me too.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I was just going to say, I'd like to know what changes have happened since it was reviewed in November.
Adam, could you address that? Do you know that? Scott? I know him, but Scott knows him better.
I'll do my best. November was even last year or so, but I'll try to remember. No, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Christiansen, I know one of the major changes was we looked really closely at the nature, the characteristic, and the alignment of that road that is on the north boundary of this annexation. And through quite a few extensive discussions with the owner, their engineer, and with the city of Highland, we came to a discussion that, or a sort of an agreement, if you will, that it would be best for that road to be in Highland, for this to be, and for the property to be annexed into American Fork, with that being a Highland road. Most of the road to the west, all the way to the west, is in Highland. And it just seemed to make sense. The alignment made sense as far as a way to get this to intersect at a 90-degree angle. We also talked extensively about making sure that once that road was built during the process of submitting and reviewing construction plans and so forth, that as it continued further to the east, the road that is on the east side that then becomes 200 East will also be realigned at the same time. So this agreement allows for future dedications. It references future dedications that will need to take place for that work on the east. That's really the only, I guess the main, it might be the only substantial change.
Which that road is the road that leads you to Fox Hollow Golf Club.
Correct. That's correct.
Mayor, I move to approve the Robinson East annexation consisting of 16.39 acres at 1400 North, 100 East, including the ordinance of annexation, revised annexation agreement, and placement of the property in the R19000 GC2 zones.
Thank you for that motion, Councilmember Taylor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, motion is approved. Item number 5 is review and action on the water banking agreement for water shares with Lakeview Farms LLC. I'm going to bring you back up, Scott. If you could just give us a brief summary on this water banking agreement.
Certain, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what this item is a banking agreement that allows the Lakeview Farms, as that development is proceeding, they went through the process of acquiring the water rights that they needed to acquire. There's a little bit of a delta, not much, but a little bit of a delta where they've acquired a little bit more water rights than is necessary. So the way this agreement is worded and written and approved by our water rights attorney is that it does two things, is that it takes the water rights that they acquired and assigns them to that development, so they will have met their obligation on water rights, and then assigns that delta, which is roughly, it's about an acre feet, not exactly, but then that is banked for future use that could be assigned to some other development in the future.
Okay. All right, any other questions for our Public Works?
I was just wondering how much rigmarole, whatever, how much effort goes into keeping track of this.
Quite a bit, actually. I have had quite an education on water rights over the last couple of weeks, and had a couple of really good discussions with our water rights attorney, also with our recorder, with Terrell, to make sure that we understand who's tracking them, and we're making sure that things get assigned to the proper development, tracked, monitored. It's a good system that we have, and we've discussed some ways to improve it.
Mayor, I would move to authorize you to sign the water banking agreement for the watershed with Lakeview Farms LLC.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 6 is a review and action on an ordinance approving a zone map amendment from the RA5 residential agriculture zone to the R1 12,000 residential zone located at 640 South Stores Avenue, which is at approximately 240 West. Our applicant is here. Is there any questions that you might have for him or for Adam, as this has gone through the Planning Commission? If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the ordinance approving a zone map amendment from the RA5 residential agricultural zone to the R1 12,000 residential zone located at 640 South Stores Avenue, 240 West.
Motion by Councilmember Stores, or Councilmember Carroll. I don't know. Yeah. Well, it's just right. It's just right there. So, do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on this motion?
Just one quick question. This is surrounded by our 12,000, kind of, but not really.
On the east, yes.
But kind of in that one area, yeah. So it fits with, I think it's important also to just make, I should be using that, sorry. I think it's also important to make that clear that this is what's, should we say, predominant in that area. So it fits.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye. Mayor, can I make a motion we turn on the fan or something in here? Is anyone else? Chief Friends is doing it right now. There we go. We had 3 council people here.
Let's do it. We're okay.
I realize that isn't on the agenda.
Okay, item number 7 has 2 parts to it. The first part is a review and action on the final plat for Williamson Ranch Plat A, consisting of 1 lot and located at 640 South Stores Avenue in the RA-5 residential agriculture zone. This is akin to our last motion.
Yeah, I move to approve the final plat. Do I have to read all of that?
Yes, you do.
Okay. For Williamson Ranch Plat A, consisting of 1 lot and located at 640 South Stores Avenue, 240 West in the RA5 residential agricultural zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat, subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the May 2nd, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.
Thanks for that motion, Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right. 7B is review and action on an ordinance approving a commercial site plan for Highland Gardens located in the area of 1700 North, 900 East in the GC-2 planned commercial zone. I will mention that my wife was up there today grabbing all kinds of flowers. And so the applicant is here along again with staff if there's any questions that we have for them.
I think it'll be nice to have that additional parking and everything up there. That's really nice. So I'll move to adopt the ordinance approving a commercial site plan for Highland Gardens located in the area of 1700 North, 900 East in the GC2 Plan Commercial Zone with instructions of the city recorder to withhold publication of the ordinance subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the May 2nd, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you for that motion, Councilmember Taylor. Do I have a second?
Aye. I mean, second.
Seconded by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion?
If I could just comment on two things. I've always thought that was in Highland, and that's why it was called Highland Gardens. So I was really happy to see it's in American Fork, and we get the tax base instead of Lehigh or somebody else. Neither here nor there. Or Highland, yeah. They're the ones that really need it, but we'll take it anyway. I don't go there very often, but my wife has dragged me there, and it's a wonderful place. I love what you do there. And just a breath of fresh air in the 2+ years I've been here. This is the first time that I can remember that somebody hasn't been in here trying to explain to us why they can have 10 less parking spots than the code allows. There are actually more parking spots there, if I read it right, than the code says you're supposed to have. And so that is wonderful. I think it's better for your business and everything else, but from our point of view, it just makes life easier, so thanks.
Yeah, I want you to know I had a wedding reception up there, so I'm not like that. I'm not coming up because my wife dragged me. We went there with her.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for Highland Gardens. Any discussion? All right, I'll go move on to a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Now I can say aye.
Okay. Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Aye. All right. Item number 8, review and action on a resolution certifying authorized users to access and to transact with the Utah Public Treasure Investment Fund, known as the PTIF accounts. As I've read this and understood this, this is kind of a new state code that is required of us to do. We felt like it was good to leave separation from our budget director and move it into places so that it was fair and balanced. Any questions on this this item?
My one question, I think you just answered. This was not a renewal. This is new.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, I move to approve the resolution authorizing David Bunker and Laurel Allman to make changes to American Fork City's investments with the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund.
Thank you for that motion, Councilmember Taylor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Councilmember Carroll. All right. Any discussion on the motion?
I guess I just have one question. I didn't think of it till just now. We're putting names in there instead of positions. So every time either of those positions, not that they're going to, but every time those change, this would have to. Does the code say that it has to be a name, I guess is my question.
The requirement from PTIF is that it has to be a name. Yeah.
Those are the two we'll have to work with.
I got it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 9. Review and action on an ordinance creating a new chapter in the Title V of the American Fork City Code regulating towing and parking enforcement services. I think that Is Chief here? He is not. Is there any questions concerning this from our packet? Again, it's we just had some predatory towing issues. We wanted to get on top of them. We had some horror stories of people just going into the store and having their car towed and having it put in impound on a Friday and not being able to get it out until Monday. And we're just requiring more transparency, more access to towing companies, and the ability to regulate them if they're predatory to do things. So.
I do have one comment, and that is, as I read the ordinance, for it is a lot of regulation for one industry, and I completely see the need for that, but I'm thinking maybe we adopt this now, and if we come up with some things where maybe it's butting against, we can tell it's over-regulation, I would hope that we would go back and change those things, and that is a request that I'm making, is to keep that an open mind to make changes for deregulating some of these things if that is warranted.
Okay, comments are noted. Any other questions?
I have a number of them. On page 96 of the packet, the first line, section on there, A, group 4, identification of the vehicle operators employed by the business. How would the identification be done? Is it driver's license?
We'll
is
turn to-
something official?
Yeah, I'll
This
turn-
is a small thing, but
What we're looking for here is just their names, because there's a criminal background check that's done on them. And so we need to identify who are the employees of the company that will be operating the tow truck.
they could give you somebody else's name.
Well, there'll be a criminal background check. So as part of that process, they would have to go and get the fingerprint done to get their criminal record. So I think if you look at the section on page 97, that it says the applicants and registrants shall be responsible to provide a BCI background check for those employees.
Then there were a couple of places, like in number 4 following that, and in a couple of other places there, it mentions authorized by the American Fork City Police Department. Do you want to specify what person, what office, how the authorization? So, I mean, one officer could say, oh, you're authorized, and it may not be real.
I think that's wise. I think what we would say is that it would be administered by the police chief or his designee. That's how we would handle it in practice.
Then there was another one, I forgot to write down the page number on here. On the list of things for fees, it mentions ice cream vendor. Is that too specific? Is there another word for people who drive around playing these obnoxious tunes? Or, if they sell frozen yogurt things, I'm not an ice cream vendor. There's got to be some kind of a description there.
Frozen vendors.
The vendors are frozen.
Food trucks?
Oh, sorry, that's on the fees, sorry.
Oh, I was wondering to write down the page. Okay, it's for a different item.
Okay. Good questions, good clarification. Thank you very much. So we do need to make a little note in the motion that's made.
There's that one that I mentioned. There's another one on page 103 and page 104 where it mentions any law enforcement officer.
Do we need to change that in the actual ordinance? Should we add different verbiage?
Yeah. We should decide who is responsible in that case.
Tim, do you want to recommend the language of this?
In this section, we would need to leave leave it the same because this says that when someone conducts a tow, they have to disclose that to any law enforcement officer. So we would want to leave that the same. What I would recommend based on your input is to just, here in the minutes, we'll have it be the police chief or his designee. I don't think it will be necessary to amend by interlineation the ordinance language, but that's how we will conduct it.
Just to be, I'm just a little skeptical always of the way somebody, you know, they could report it to a Lehigh law enforcement officer, but we'd better at least say American Fork.
All right, so going back to the business licensing one that you raised at the beginning. This is the Chapter 5 one. Where was it saying the police department?
One's on 103 and one's on 104, but right now I can't find it.
Do you remember where you were referring to the American Fork Police Department? Is it in paragraph 4 of page 96? I think if you go to page 96 of the packet.
Yeah, paragraph 4.
See how it says at the end, by the American Fork Police Department? What if the council approved it with the amendment by the police chief of the American Fork Police Department or his designee?
All right, any other concerns? If not,
Well, I found the one on 103. It's in 3 section, you know, about 5 lines down from the top, any law enforcement officer. And there's a similar one on page 104. Yeah, it's letter B, close to the top of page 104. Just call me suspicious, whatever. Somebody's going to try it.
Are you suggesting then it be any American Fork law enforcement officer? That'd be fine.
okay. Just designate a jurisdiction. Is there any time where we bring in, if there's something big, that we're bringing in other agencies, that this might become a problematic thing if we specify American Fork only?
There are times where we're so busy that we'll have agencies come in and help us, or there's times where we'll trade off time and we'll cover Lehigh, for example, for 5 hours when they cover for us. And so, to answer your question, yes, there are times when law enforcement agencies are in the city helping us.
But wouldn't those be, they're fairly limited, and I'm not saying they don't exist.
Well, there would still be the chief of police's designee.
Or the designee, and
They'd still be under the direction of the American Fork Chief of Police.
normally these are not going to be emergencies unless it's your car. and then it becomes an emergency, and I understand that. So
So, you know, I think that we've kind of set the tone at the beginning of this as American Fork chief or a designee. Do we need to take all these other subsections and, again, specify a jurisdiction? Is that something the council would like to do? Or can we leave that language open-ended with law enforcement? Are you comfortable with that, Tim, by leaving it open? Or do you think we need to be specific to our jurisdiction only?
Well, I think in addressing Councilmember Christiansen's concern about any law enforcement officer, just to make sure I understand, are you concerned that somebody might be representing themselves falsely as a law enforcement officer?
No, I'm just concerned that, their brother might be in the car with them and they happen to be a police officer in New York City or something. Oh, I reported it to a law enforcement officer.
I see. Well, so I think that the way that these sections are intended is so that when the towing company takes action, they need to be able to disclose that to a law enforcement officer. So instead of saying get a warrant, get a subpoena, or I'm not telling you, what we're requiring them by our ordinance to do is communicate with law enforcement. And so if somebody were related to law enforcement, I even if they disclosed it to that person, I don't think that would hurt the city, because what we're trying for is transparency.
You know that and I know that. I just want to make sure it's here.
Since this is an American Fork City ordinance, quote unquote, is it correct, and I'm going to use the word to assume, and a lot of you know what the word assume breaks down to. I'm going to use that word assume. Is it correct to assume that it's an American Fork ordinance, so we're talking about the American Fork Police Department? Is that too big of a stretch from a legal point of view?
From a legal point of view, this would apply to any law enforcement officer. So in the state of Utah, to become a law enforcement officer, you have to be certified through police officer standards and training. So anyone certified with POST would be eligible to receive this information as written.
All right, I think there's some, a couple points. If we're satisfied, if you want to make a motion, Councilmember Christiansen, and just change that, we'll see where this can take us. I think we're real close.
Why don't you just put something at the very beginning that law enforcement officer applies to the local jurisdiction or their designee? That would cover 2 different pages.
So on page 94, we have a definition section. We could include a section for law enforcement officer, and define law enforcement officer is any state certified law enforcement officer, including American Fork officers or their designee.
Do we even go on duty? Anything like that? Or
Well, if you had another post-certified person in another jurisdiction, would that person know to follow this procedure?
I doubt it, but see, I think that the towing companies are the ones who will know about it, and we want them to communicate with law enforcement. So, for example, if someone was having trouble with a predatory towing company and they weren't getting any response, maybe they're in Highland or Lehigh, and if they reach out to a local law enforcement officer in their jurisdiction for help, I don't know if it would benefit the city to limit, if our object is to assist the citizen in getting their car back, to make them work through the American Fork Police Department if there's a more convenient channel for them.
My concern would be, and maybe I'm just looking at this backward or something, if they report it to an officer in another jurisdiction, is that officer going to know to follow through and make sure that they follow the procedures that we have instituted here?
Well, there is a disclosure section where they are to report to just the American Fork Police Department in a separate section. That's where the towing companies will only report to American Fork. This is not, so the communication from the towing company will only come to American Fork. However, if a citizen is requesting assistance to get the towing company to respond, that is more broad. That is for any law enforcement officer.
Sorry, I think I called you sergeant earlier, lieutenant. I don't know what I was thinking. If you get a call similar to this for somebody in, say, Lehigh, aren't you just going to try and get rid of it and give it to somebody in Lehigh as quick as you can? Wouldn't that be kind of normal protocol rather than get involved in it?
It depends. If it's an American Fork citizen that we're talking about and there's something we can do about it, then we may step in and just try and assist because we want to take care of our people, right? We want to treat them right. So it just depends.
Depends on the circumstances.
So Margaret, take a whack at the motion, add your take.
And Lynn, can you go to the cover? There it goes.
I move to adopt the ordinance creating a new chapter in Title 10 of the American Fork City Code regulating towing and parking enforcement operations, making things clear that the reporting should be done to American Fork officers.
Should it be Title 5?
We've got the two titles there, 5 and 10.
Oh, you're on the wrong one. Probably.
That's
Number
why I
9
said-
is,
Maybe that's why I found it so easy. Oh, yes.
So the same thing, we're just changing this to
Right.
Title 10. Right. 5, excuse me.
10 to 5.
Right. Who's up first? Will that work?
Well, I'm okay with keeping it just plain American, law enforcement officer. So I guess I don't agree with that motion.
I withdraw my
let's-
motion.
let's just clarify that motion. You're meaning Title 5, correct?
Yes.
American Fork City Code. Okay.
So, Councilman Carroll, you are fine with the ordinance as written? Enough that even with the stipulations, you feel like it's going to cause a problem that we specify in American Fork?
I do. From what Mr. Merrill was saying, it limits us a little bit in our ability to regulate. I understand that, right?
Well, let's just see where we land here. We have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion? Okay, the motion dies. Does somebody want to make an alternative motion?
I move to adopt the ordinance creating a new chapter in Title V of the American Fork City Code regulating towing and parking enforcement services.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Tater.
Aye.
All right, item number 10 is review and action on an ordinance creating a new chapter in Title 10 of the American Fork City Code regulating towing and parking enforcement operations. Is there any questions on this? If not, I'll entertain another motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt the ordinance creating a new chapter in Title 10 of the American Fork City Code regulating towing and parking enforcement operations.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Tater. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Tater.
Aye.
All right, moving right along. Item number 11 is review and action on a resolution updating the general fee schedule. This was an item in our last work session. Again, just a tweak, you might say, just minor alterations to our city fee schedule. We went through quite a depth last year, line by line. Again, we did this year, but there was just a very, very few to kind of capture the economy of scales and what's going on, and to try to make it a fair and equal and balanced approach at our fee schedule. Any questions on this?
Now can I talk about the ice cream vendor? I agreed with the things here that just happened to catch my eye, is that there are possibilities of other people driving through town similar to an ice cream vendor who should be under the same concerns or rules.
Which page are you looking at?
111 at the bottom. And above it, the ice cream vendor. Can you think of another out there? David's got it.
Could we put a mobile food vendor just to make it more broad?
How will you distinguish that food truck?
Well, the food truck typically goes to a spot and stops and sells from there. And these mobile food vendors drive the streets. Yeah.
So if you put in, if you did mobile food vendor and then in parentheses, not food trucks, would that clarify it for somebody in 10 years that's trying to figure out what we meant to do tonight? Because they're addressed elsewhere.
Oh, I had one other question. You're going to shoot me. On development fees, when it talks about asphalt cut, and I don't remember what page that's on, I didn't write it down, where it has the first 100 feet for an asphalt cut and an additional 100 feet, should that be contiguous, or should we specify that that should be 100 feet here, and if you cut another 100 feet or portion thereof adjacent to it, that would be that additional instead of a completely separate one?
We could add, so it says per each additional 100 square feet, we could add of the same cut.
Good catch. So each cut is separate.
Yes.
If they're not connected somehow, somewhere, correct?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to save the city money.
Thank you.
I do have a comment on something different, and that is that I'm okay with all of these fees as is, except for the fitness center. And the reason is because every year we raise the fees for the fitness center, but we don't have a plan in place of where we are going with trying to fund the fitness center. So in my mind, it's like we're penalizing the patrons and our citizens without any target to get there. And I would like to see some sort of plan or some analysis in order to know where our fees need to be to cover things. And including in that, I would like to see maybe something about what other fitness centers charge, and maybe some other bigger gyms, so we had some comparison of the two. I don't want to just arbitrarily raise the fees.
And Derek isn't here tonight, but or he is.
I think that's
there. He
the guy
is.
in the
He's
corner.
hiding back there. He's in my blind spot.
He's in my blind spot too. Do you want to? Would you come up and maybe answer some questions, Derek?
So I would say our strategy, and then I could see how much more detail. So these, we do have the information comparing other facilities, and that I can provide. I didn't with this. Our goal is to raise it to 4% a year, just to keep up with our increased operating costs, and that's kind of an unofficial thing that Pleasant Grove, Lehigh, and we have done each year just to kind of keep our prices similar to each other, where we're not having to do a bigger jump every 5 years or something. So the strategy is just to do a little bit each year to keep up with costs. As far as the overall plan, this would help with offsetting the cost recovery of the fitness center to decrease the subsidy. But we don't have like a goal or a plan to take it down to zero. We're trying to stay at about the 80% cost recovery mark right now. So, but I can share with you those spreadsheets that show AF, Lehigh, PG. We're below Provo. We're very similar to the new Springville one. We're actually lower than the new Springville one by about, I think they're $465 on an annual family resident. So we're just below that.
I think there's a couple of things here, and they've been kind of alluded to and kind of spoken. The fees do not cover the cost of operating the rec center. I think I heard Clark say, like the library. I think we're in the same situation. So I think the concern that I personally have, and I think I may have heard you, Councilwoman Carroll, say the same thing. At some point, we've got to address, we're going to have to spend a lot of money to do something with the rec center. Otherwise, it continues to deteriorate over time. And there have been some things that have been fixed up, like the lockers and some other things. That's not tonight's discussion, but I think at some point we need to have that discussion. What do we really want that rec center to be? And what's it going to cost us for alternatives, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I think we have to have a plan for how do we get some money into what I'm going to call a sinking fund or a separate account to start to save the money so that we don't have to borrow every single penny to redo it when the time comes. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, American Fork's growing, and that fitness center is just getting more and more use, and sooner or later it's got to grow.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. So, okay, we've had a couple changes, some suggested changes. Does somebody want to kind of wrap this up in a bow and make a motion, and we can move it forward?
Mayor, I'd move to approve the resolution updating the general fee schedule. The only change that I'm in favor of is the mobile vendor as opposed to the ice cream vendor. I think the more granular we try to get with these things, the more loopholes we create. And I think, that's just my opinion, I think if we change that to mobile food vendor, I think we cover our bases. I don't think we need to talk about how it's covered in another ordinance. I hope that we're up to speed enough as a staff and as a council that we can, we can go forward with what we've got rather than adding tons of additional detail that we may not need. But that's just me.
Could we at least put parentheses, food truck or something, ice cream vendor or something?
Excluding food truck.
Excluding food trucks, okay, yeah.
Sure.
You come for that? Okay. Councilman Taylor has accepted that addition to his motion, so do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion?
What about the asphalt? I don't want somebody to think that they can cut asphalt here and have an additional cut over here and call it a second cut, or
So I would suggest that we go with the verbiage that David used as of the same cut. Okay.
Okay. You support that second? Okay, so we do have a motion and a second.
Okay, I don't second the motion.
Oh.
Just Kevin.
Kevin, you're right, it's Councilmember Barnes, excuse me. Okay, any discussion on this motion?
Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
I'm going to vote no just for the reasons that I said. I would like a little bit more information on that before I increase that.
Okay. Councilmember Taylor. Aye. Okay, motion carries. Item number 12 is a review and action on an ordinance amending the American Fork City Policies and Procedure Manual. Again, an item we had in our work session. I think if there's any questions, we would direct them at Camden if he's available. Does anybody have any questions as they've read through this? Okay, Camden, we'll bring you forward.
Page one, packet, page 136.
Yeah.
Section H.
I don't have the packets.
Well, it's on the screen.
Okay.
That big paragraph there, that blue part that's added is kind of half of a word there. That needs to be clarified.
We're pulling out the ROI in addition to this.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a good chance there's going to be a couple of grammatical issues as you add the editing stuff. It could mess it up. You can try and fix all those extra spaces or stuff like that. That one, yeah, we would clarify that part. That's a good catch.
Take out salary.
Specify conditions.
I wasn't sure where you wanted to make the split.
Yeah, we'll look through that carefully, make sure all the grammar and formatting is cleaned up.
And then page 139. Down at the bottom on probationary period 1A. Oh, I see. It didn't show up. It is 12 months and 6 is crossed off. I couldn't see that earlier, so that's okay.
I have a question on that one, actually. Did we discuss this? I don't remember discussing it. That just seems like a really long probationary period. I was going to make some smart remarks, but I'll just leave it at probationary period. Is that kind of standard in the world now? I'm just confused.
We did do a poll of a number of other cities. That's just often what we use as our reference and our connections. And it was about half and half. Some did 6 months, some did a year. And it was really just an internal discussion with David and some of the directors in terms of experience they've had managing staff. 6 months with the ability to extend is an option too, but during that time, we're protected as a city if performance goes down, is reduced, or there's other issues that come up, and sometimes those things start to appear after 6 months, and so we wanted that window to be able to observe that and react if necessary. But as part of that, we also made a couple other changes so that we're not holding back vacation and these other leaves during that same time. And so in a lot of other ways, they're just as a normal employee with the benefits and leave and those sort of things as it would be, but we as a city are kind of protected a little bit longer.
So yeah, I saw some of those where the benefits start on the first day.
Yeah, right.
That concerned me a little bit because I'm used to where they may start on the first day, but you're not actually eligible to use them for a certain time period. I'm not going to go into that. That's not for tonight's discussion. But what was in the document at the work session? Was it 12 or was it 6?
12 for the probation period. It was 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I just slept through that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Stay right there. Okay.
One
Any
other question.
Yeah, sure.
Page 212, where it talks about acceptance of gifts. One of the fourth one down, D, political campaign contributions actually used in a political campaign. It says that people have to resign their positions to run for office. So isn't that kind of...
Can you pull it down a little bit so we can see?
Yeah, go to the last of the page before it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
unless they were running for an office in another city.
Sorry, what was the question?
Okay, it says they, it's okay to accept a gift, like a couple of these other things, like an award or a loan.
Sure.
And they can accept political campaign contributions actually used in a political campaign. But in another section, it specifies that they have to resign their position in the city to run for office that's in the city. But maybe they're running for a different office, I guess. You could look at that.
Yeah, it should be if you're running for a political office within the city.
Right.
But it could be a different office.
Correct. Any other questions? Okay.
That's actually stipulated someplace else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking those were trust purposes there, but they could be running for a different office.
Well, Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution approving the amended policies and procedures manual as written.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
All right, item number 13 is review and action on a resolution adopting outdoor water conservation measures for the 2018 watering season. A few changes to be noted. This has been discussed in a couple meetings with the Water Conservation Committee. We felt like I think the two big notable changes are the day that we want people to be able to check out their system, and kind of a day of rest, I guess, for the water is Saturday. We feel like people are going to more apt to mow their lawn and not water on that day. We're asking them not to. We are extending the window of watering just to level out the pressures. We found that there's some pressure issues on the northwest side of town, and by giving them a bigger window, it increases the pressure. Our thought was, as a committee, is that because of the lower pressures, if they're all competing at the same time, that they will automatically turn up their clock and run it for a longer period of time. And so we hope that this is something new, and we felt like it was a good idea to move forward with it and present it to you as a council. I have others that are on the committee that could address this as well if you have further questions.
Mayor, I move to approve the resolution adopting the outdoor water conservation measures for the 2018 watering season.
Okay, thank you for that motion, Councilman Taylor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion?
Mayor, this isn't directly on the motion, but I think it's a note. So this year I have a friend in the landscaping business, and I ordered a Wi-Fi clock from him that I hooked up. I hooked it up to my home's Wi-Fi. It taps a local weather station, and there is one in American Fork. I can go in and from my phone adjust those times. If it's rained 0.3 inches in the past 7 days, shut my system off, or don't do that. If the temperature dips below 51, don't do that. I have just been amazed, because one of my pet peeves, as you know, Brad, is we've talked driving down in a downpour and seeing, everything from school districts, city parks, neighbors, everything having their water going full blast while we're in the middle of a rainstorm. This takes all of the ability for me to be stupid out, because it's right there and I have it all programmed in there. Probably been the best investment I've made in terms of conservation and being able to manage that ever. And You know, it's something, you look at revamping your system, it's certainly a worthwhile investment. You know, we talked about smoke detectors, we talked about thermostats, and we manage everything in our smart homes. But this sprinkler control has been fantastic for me. It's my most favorite thing. I show everyone when it comes to the house. They leave, but, you know. Anyway.
And there's a great rebate on them too.
Just maybe a little observation, and we're going to get into semantics a little bit. We've increased the time that people can water. I think that's a fair statement. They've got a longer time to water. This simple brain says if you give people more time to water, that's not conservation. And I understand there are both sides to the argument. What I'm saying is that I think before we do this next year, we need to have a lot of discussion about what words mean and how they affect behavior and what it is we're really trying to achieve. Are we trying to achieve true conservation, or are we trying to maximize our water flow? Because if the pressure goes down, you can water longer, but if your sprinkler is supposed to go out 15 feet and it can now only go out 10 feet, that 5 feet, it doesn't matter how much longer you water, it's not going to get watered. So all I'm saying is, on public record, I'm asking for more discussion before we go into next water season. That's the bottom line.
How often, though, Kevin, I agree, we have to have this clarification, but how often is your pressure not sufficient at any time to run your sprinklers the way they're intended to be run? How many times do you turn on your irrigation system and have the pressure been so poor that you weren't throwing the 15 feet or whatever? I don't think that happens.
The honest answer to that is I have no idea, because they come on at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That doesn't happen, so it is.
And I realize it may not be happening that often, but I've been told that part of the reason for this whole thing was the northwest section, and I lived in the northwest section, but I'm not apparently as far north or west as where the problems were. I am been told that part of the reason for this is to help that northwest section get more water pressure, because last summer they didn't have the water pressure. Now, I may have been told incorrectly. I did not go out and look. It's just something I've learned within the last week or two. So all I'm saying is I think we need to discuss and get some good input on all the facets. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not saying we're right or wrong or anywhere else yet. I just want more discussion for next year.
And earlier in the year, too.
Okay.
I agree
For
with
sure.
you know how I am. I always want more information. I love more information, but I do think that we have a water board that vets these things a little bit, and I would hope that they would go through the minutia of it all and give us maybe a summary of it. And so, yeah, I don't want to have to do that ourselves when we have those people that know way more about water than me.
I'm not defining discussion. I'm just putting it out.
Well, I'm just making an assumption, but Jay's been in the thick of this with all of you, I don't think, didn't. So, yeah, that satisfies me also.
And for the record, at our last meeting, it was actually our water superintendent, Jay, who made this motion to have this put forward today. He made the motion, it was seconded, it was a unanimous decision. So it came, the guy who knows the system best, Mr. Brims, he made the motion. And again, it was thoroughly discussed. We have a lot of data. Perhaps we could be more inclusive with the data, with the gallons of water, what time they're used. There is so much data available that we have at our disposal, where it's going, and so we're happy to share that. We're not trying to make it a secret. Yeah. So, okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 14 is a review and action on the award of a contract with Larson & Company, P.C., for financial audit services for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018 through June 30th, 2020, with an option 2-year extension based on audit performance.
That should be optional, should it not? Optional 2-year extension.
I made that mistake.
No, I'm not saying anybody made a mistake. I just want to make sure that.
I'm okay with throwing that AL right on the end of that one, okay?
My fingers got a little too fast typing RCA.
That's that stupid.
The most important thing is the numbers are correct.
Okay, as you know, Kyle and David went through quite an extensive process. We're soliciting these bids. We are varying from our past auditors, but we felt like we have a qualified company, highly recommended. They scored high. And any other questions?
Mayor, I move to accept the bids submitted by Larson and Company PC for the fiscal year 2018, 2020 financial audits with an optional 2-year extension based on audit performance, and to authorize the city administrator to enter into a professional services contract with Larson Company PC.
Motion by Councilmember Taylor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion?
I think it should say physical years, 2018 through 2020.
It's fiscal.
Physical years. I think the years should
Right.
be a plural. Sorry, the OCD kicked in. It's after 9 o'clock.
Yeah, they know a little ways.
Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Sorry, I keep saying that. I have to click. I have to put something on the little mark. Okay. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 15, review and action on approval of a contract with Michael Baker International for consulting services. I would entertain a motion to perhaps table this for at least another week. We have a few things that we'd like to iron out and bring it forth at another time.
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to table it by Councilman Taylor and a second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 16, review and action on a resolution appointing Chief Darren Falsleff as representative on the North Utah Valley Animal Shelter Board with Josh Christensen as an alternate.
I move to approve the resolution appointing Darren Falslev as the representative for American Fork on the NUVAS board with Josh Christensen as an alternate.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Christiansen,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion?
I have a question. Does he want to be on this board?
He would love to.
Oh.
Yeah. He was jumping up and down.
I mean, who would?
Well, I mean, he has a lot of other things to do, so I don't know. As long as you think it's a good use, then okay.
Stacy would like to be second in line.
All right, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
What? To me already?
Yes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
You know, I got smart and just kind of, I could hit absence without saying it out loud, so I spit out my gum, so now I can do three things at the same time. Item number 17, review and action on approval of a contract for workman's compensation insurance. We have two bids that were presented, one from the Workman's Compensation Fund of Utah and one from the trust, Utah Local Governments Trust. In our packet, and today we received email as these bids came through, Is there any questions from the providers? I think David would be the best one directed at if we have any questions as to maybe the ups and downs of this. The price is with the dividend that is projected from the WCF it's pretty close. It's they might be a $777 lower. Is there any other questions? Because I would direct this at staff. They've been in the middle of this and they're right down in the trenches with these two companies. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the proposal from Workers' Compensation Fund in the amount of $170,013 to provide workers' compensation insurance for the City of American Fork, and move to authorize the mayor to execute said contract.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Carroll. A second? Second. Seconded by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion?
Just a couple of questions. Do we need to say this is effective July 1st of this year? I think we need an effective date on when this change is. And is this a one-year contract, et cetera, et cetera?
That would be appropriate to put in there that it begins July 1 of
2018, and it is a one-year contract.
It was not specified that it is a 1 year, so typically we do get bids annually to look at this and review it.
All right, would we?
There's no question. I think that I'd like to, what do you do? Add that to the motion.
Would you add that to the motion and the second? Yes. Okay, so we're adding the date, effective date of July 1, 2018 to the motion. It has been seconded, and I'm calling for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton is absent. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 18. This has been a long list, but we've gotten through it well. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by... who?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Christiansen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So you don't know what's happened here. They're forcing the mayor to vote, and I am going to abstain from voting. No, the mayor votes aye. Let's go home.